2018 was a pretty big year for Google. Now, we didn't have a ton of new Google Home hardware except for the Google Home Hub and some other smart displays. We did see a lot of new Google Assistant features, including quite a few that dropped towards the tail end of last year. So in this video, I'm going to take you through what some of those new features were and how you can use them on your Google Home devices. And a little bit later on in this video, I am going to talk about some of the new Google Assistant features as well as a ton of new Google Assistant devices that were just announced at the Consumer Electronics Show out in Vegas. So let's go ahead and get to it. And first, let's start with the broadcast feature. Now, you've been able to broadcast all of your Google Home devices for a good while now, but recently Google introduced a feature where you can reply to a broadcast, either from your mobile device or from a Google Home device. Here's an example of how it can work. Google, broadcast, dinner's ready.
It's dinner time.
Reply, okay, I'll be right there.
Got it. Broadcast.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Next up, podcasts. If you use the Google Assistant to listen to podcasts either on your smartphone or on any of your Google Home devices, you now have more options with controlling podcasts with voice commands. You can tell Google to increase speed or speed up the podcast, or you can even tell Google to play the podcast at 1.5. Another new feature that Google added that's beneficial if you have Android phones in the house is that you can now tell Google to silence all phones and it'll do that. Next up, Chromecast devices and speaker groups. Google just announced that you can now use Chromecast TV devices in speaker groups with all of your other Google Home devices. Previous to this change, the only Chromecast device you could use in speaker groups was the Chromecast audio device. But now, if you have a Chromecast TV device plugged into your TV, you can now group it with all of your other Google Home speakers so you can cast podcasts, music, whatever media you want to that speaker group, and now your TV will play the same sound as your Google Home devices. If you're unfamiliar with speaker groups, you can group any of your Google Home and Chromecast devices together into groups. You can do this by going to your Google Home app, click Settings, scroll down to Add, then select Create a Speaker Group. Select the title of your speaker, choose the speakers, and then enjoy the magic of using your voice to play music on all of the speakers in your group. Next up, Pretty Please. If you've ever had the desire for yourself or someone else in your family to treat the Google Assistant just a tad bit nicer, this feature is for you. All you have to do is ask the Google Assistant either on a Google Home device or on your smartphone to do something for you, but use the interjection please or thank you, and you'll get just this really beautiful response from the Google Assistant with a really pleasing sound that sounds like this. Please set a timer for 1 minute.
It's nice of you to ask so nicely. Sure, 1 minute. Starting now.
Next up, for you British and Australian transplants here in the good old US of A, you can now use Google Assistant voices with British and Australian accents. One cool tidbit about these new voices is that they use DeepMind, a British artificial intelligence company owned by Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. They use WaveNet technology made by DeepMind. I'll drop a link below in the description if you're curious about reading more on WaveNet speech synthesis. Are you from Australia?
Huh, I can't tell. Sorry.
Are you British?
I'm a native of the World Wide Web.
One cool new assistant feature for all of you travelers out there is called proactive flight delays. Google is rolling out this feature where when you ask the Google Assistant if your flight is going to be delayed, it will use a combination of machine learning algorithms as well as historical flight data to be able to predict whether or not your flight is going to be delayed before the airline will announce it. Now, whenever possible, Google will also tell you the reason for the flight delay, whether it's a maintenance issue or it's because an incoming flight is late as well. Now, this information was previously available through other Google services as well as third-party sites like FlightAware, but having it on the Google Assistant makes it just much more convenient. If you're concerned about technology causing too much distraction in your life or the lives of your family members, Google has you covered here as well with something called Digital Wellbeing. This was announced at I/O last year, and it's one of the most important initiatives the company has undertaken with all of its products and services. Digital Wellbeing is a collection of features that make users of Google services and products more aware of the technology they're using, how much time they're spending on these services and with these devices, and then giving users easy options to get away from their devices and take a break. Digital Wellbeing for the Google Assistant devices revolves around filters and downtime, which you can set up in settings on your Google Home app. Filters can help you place limits on certain services like filtering out explicit music or choosing what video services you want to make available to your household. Downtime disables most functionality on your Google Home devices, while alarms and timers will still work. Activities that begin before your downtime kicks in will also still work. So, for example, if you like to listen to music while you fall asleep, you can have your Google Home device play music before you activate downtime. Now, you can schedule downtime for some of your devices or all of your devices, as well as you can schedule downtime for different times on different days. If you want to read more about Google's digital well-being efforts, I'll make sure to drop a link below to their website that they've set up around digital well-being. Well, that wraps it up for all the Google Assistant features updates, but we're not done yet because this week was the Consumer Electronics Show out in Vegas, and luckily for us fans of Google Assistant devices, there were a ton of new Google Assistant devices that were announced at CES this year, so many that we don't even have time to mention them all. I'll be sure to drop a link below to a great story by The Verge that goes over everything that was announced around the Google Assistant in the description below. But first, let's go ahead and get to the highlights, and we'll start off with devices for the Google Assistant. And the first one I want to mention is the Lenovo Smart Clock. The Lenovo Smart Clock is a 4-inch Google Assistant display that is made to be placed on your nightstand, and it's made to replace an alarm clock that you may have on your nightstand already. The nice thing about this, in comparison to the Echo Spot from Amazon, is that it does not include a camera. And it's not a device that you're necessarily going to want to watch YouTube videos or see pictures on, but it's perfect for setting alarms, timers, and getting some more information like the weather, things that you would want to know when you wake up or go to bed. One of the biggest announcements from the event was that Google Assistant will finally be available on Sonos devices. No word yet on when exactly the Assistant will be available on Sonos devices this year, but we do know that the Google Assistant will first be available on the Sonos Beam and Sonos One devices. Another smart display that was announced at CES this year comes from KitchenAid, and it's actually a Google Assistant smart display that is waterproof and specifically designed for you to place in your kitchen. So if you spill your waffle batter all over your smart display, you don't have to worry about ruining the device. You can just go wash off the batter. It'll be fine. There were also some new soundbars and TVs from various device manufacturers that announced the Google Assistant will come on their products, including Samsung, which will now include the Google Assistant, and Bixby. Now, there's another device category I wanted to talk about a little bit more, which is a brand new device category for Google Assistant devices, and these are Google Assistant devices for your car. Both JBL and Anker announced new devices that plug into your car's 12-volt port and allow you to have a hands-free experience with the Google Assistant in your car. Both devices are priced right around $50, one's $50, one's $60. They both can either connect through your car through either Bluetooth or even one of them has a 3.5 millimeter jack input. You can charge your phone or something else through those USB-A ports. And these devices I think are really going to be interesting, especially as we ramp up to this year's holiday season because of the price point and the functionality they're going to bring to so many people's cars that don't currently have a voice feature or an assistant in the car. Now, Now, talking about these devices in the car leads me to talk about one of Google's biggest announcements at CES this year, which is that it is going to be bringing the Google Assistant to Google Maps on Android and iOS, which is a big deal, especially for Google Maps on iOS. Now, previously there has been a Google Assistant app on iOS devices. You can actually create a Siri shortcut to have Siri wake the Google Assistant, and then you can use it hands-free just like you would a Google Home. I'll put a video out. You can click on this video and I'll demo exactly how to set that up. It's really great for your car for a hands-free experience right now if you are an iOS user, but not that many people have downloaded the Google Assistant app on the iPhone, which I do recommend. It's a really great app, but Google putting the Assistant in Google Maps is just going to give it so much more exposure to so many more users of iOS devices and hopefully ramp up the adoption of the Google Assistant. Another new Google Assistant capability that Google debuted at CES this year is the Translator functionality. What this allows you to do is use a Google Home device like a translator. Right now, they're piloting these in high-end hotels around the US where they have a Google Home hub set up at the desk. So if you have someone coming in to talk to a concierge person and they speak a language the concierge person doesn't know, they can actually use the Google Assistant to translate the conversation in real time back and forth between the two people speaking two different languages. This could be a really important feature for the Google Assistant going forward. I've seen some demos online. You can look it up on YouTube. Sometimes it doesn't get it quite right, but the translation seems like it's about 95-98% there as far as accuracy. So really cool feature to see, and we'll of course demo it for you when it rolls out to Google Home devices later this year. Well, that wraps up the major updates out of CES this year for the Google Assistant and Google Home devices. There were a couple of devices that we didn't get to that were announced, so we're going to drop a story by The Verge that goes over all of the Google Assistant devices and features that were announced this year at CES below in the video description, so make sure you check that out. If you like this video, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Well, thanks again so much for watching. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder.